All right, guys, so I am super excited for this video in the module. Up to this point, we've obviously gotten deep into product development, into the customer archetype. And as you know, a key framework for us is visual differentiation. And I'd like to say that I'm amazing at everything and perfect at everything, but there's some areas of the business that there's just people that are so dang talented that they're better to do it than me. And in this case, I consider literally one of the best in the space at understanding the visuals, especially as it comes to e-commerce and on Amazon listings. And correct me if my pronunciation's wrong, but Anthony Confrancesco?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. I don't know if I gave it enough of that Italian oomph to give it justice, but
Great.
But this is just not blowing smoke at all. That's not how I operate. Anthony, I've seen his presentations before, and they're literally world class when it comes to this stuff. So I'm super excited to have him share some of his time and impart some of his wisdom as literally one of the best folks in understanding imagery when it comes to e-commerce. So with that said, Anthony, I'll maybe pass it on to you and I'll be along for the ride. Maybe I'll ask a question or two, but I'm as excited as folks in the course to hear what you have to say about visual differentiation and branding and imagery in general.
All right. Well, Adam, thanks so much for having me on. I hope everybody's excited for this because there's going to be a lot of really great information here. I'm going to pop over and start sharing my screen. Let's see. I might have to. Okay, I can pull up this window. Yeah. And so how it's how I like to do these presentations is like the topic that we're talking about today. It is all about visual differentiation. And there's going to be a lot of slides and a lot of examples. And whether you're a new seller, whether you're a very advanced seller, there's going to be something that you're going to learn here that you can implement into your business and start making an impact right away. So I call this hacking the brain. This is visual optimization strategies for FBA. I'm not going to spend much time telling you about myself. I'm going to really jump into the content, but I guess just a quick background, just so some of this stuff makes sense, is that I started my career actually working at Amazon. I really got to dive into seeing what happens behind the scenes, and I've taken a lot of that knowledge to creating how I actually manage my creative process and knowing what's Amazon okay with, what are they not okay with. I also sell on Amazon. I actually started selling before I started working full-time at Amazon. I launched a product, thought it would be a great way to make some money on the side. And, you know, nothing bad to say about Amazon. It's a fantastic company to work for. I ended up leaving because the guy who actually taught me how to sell on Amazon, this was maybe 4 years ago, said, hey, I know you like your job at Amazon, but why don't you quit and help me scale a creative agency that I have out in Manila, Philippines? And so if you saw the earlier slide, I'm a college dropout. I knew that was a terrible decision, but I also knew I'd end up regretting it if I didn't do it. So I quit my job, moved out to the Philippines, and helped scale a creative agency to more than 30 full-time employees. We did everything from copywriting, video, photography, and graphic design. And we actually sold that business to an aggregator back in 2019. And so I've really seen this from all angles. I've managed the creative process. I've literally seen hundreds and hundreds of listings. And I've been doing this for quite a while. So one of the things that when I ran my agency that we were really heavy on using was PickFu. And at the time, we were using it for main image optimizations. At the time, not really many people were doing this. We're going to talk about some of those examples today, but it's just to kind of give you a quick overview of who I am and where a lot of this knowledge comes from. The real reason that I'm telling you all of this, though, the real reason that I'm telling you all this, though, is, you know, kind of why am I telling you this is because what I really want to get across in this is that creativity is not magic. Visual optimizations, visual differentiation, it's not magic. Me personally, despite owning a creative agency that was quite large, one of the biggest in the space at the time, I still don't know how to use a camera shooting off of manual mode. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I don't know how to use Illustrator. I can't do any of this stuff, but what I can do is have a vision for what looks good, and I can advise my team on how to actually get these things done. And I've had a good amount of success doing this and getting high conversion rates for my listings. The other thing that I want to really emphasize about visual differentiation is that masterpieces are not essential in FBA, right? We're not trying to make art. What we're really trying to do is send really clear and functional messages that get into our customer's brain. And so that's the whole topic today. I call it hacking the brain, and in just a few minutes, you're going to understand why I call it that. Now, this talk is going to be broken up into two different parts. We're going to have the framework and the strategies. The framework is really important because regardless of where you are at in your selling journey, this is going to help you to start to demystify this creative process, to understand, okay, what am I trying to do here? What's the end goal? And even if I'm not an artist, even if I'm not a graphic designer or a photographer, how can I understand what the end goal is, and how can I actually get assets on my listing or develop products that are going to help me actually sell and be successful as a seller? The second part is what I call strategies, and that's going to be, these are things that you can go and implement right now. If you're a seller, you can go and do these on your listing. Some of them are pre-launch as well. They're very implementable and they're ready to go. So it's going to cover a whole bunch of things today in this talk. But with that being said, let's jump right in. This is going to be a lot of slides. Adam, after this is done, I'll send over this whole slide deck so you can upload it into the content module of the course so people can feel free to download it. But if anyone has any questions with this is the only thing that I do at PickFu, is get to really dive into these research projects. So if anyone ever has a question, feel free to hit me up, anthony@pickfu.com. So let's start with this framework real quick, and that's, what is conversion optimization? And so, as you probably already know, success on Amazon is going to come down to really two key factors, right? You've got traffic, that's the number of people that you can actually get to come to your listing, and then you have conversion. This talk is going to focus solely on conversion. Kind of like Adam was saying earlier that, hey, I wish I was the expert on everything. I'm really not good at all on the traffic side. I understand the basis of PPC, but it is not my specialty. Conversion is really what I focus on, and it's really the only thing that I would say that I'm an expert on. And when I'm talking about conversion, I'm really talking about what can we do as sellers to increase the probability that when someone lands on your listing, that you're actually going to get them to click add to cart, that you're going to get them to take a buying action. And so for me personally, I look at conversion rate as the most important metric, and that really comes down to a few key points. First and foremost is the more that you're converting, you're going to see higher direct sales, right? That's kind of a no-brainer. But on top of that, as your conversion rate goes up and up and up, you're actually going to see lower ad spend. You're going to be spending less on your pay-per-click costs. But most importantly, the Amazon algorithm is based fundamentally on conversion, right? Amazon wants to see, if we send traffic to your listing, if we put your ranking up higher, are you going to be able to consistently and reliably get people to click add to cart to buy the product? That's the number one metric that they're really looking for. And so the cool thing is, there's all these different tools in your arsenal that you can use to increase your conversion rate. Now, one thing that is a statistic that I like to share that is really crucial to this presentation is that the average conversion rate for a Prime shopper is 74%. So just think about that for a second. Almost 3/4 of everyone who lands on a listing, if they're a Prime shopper, is going to end up buying the product. And the reason that's so important to emphasize is to really give you a baseline in terms of what's possible, right? We're going to talk about that a little bit in this presentation. The cool thing, like I was saying earlier, is that when it comes to actually getting a high conversion rate, there's all of these different tools in your arsenal that you can use. Now, I don't recommend trying to fluctuate your price. I don't recommend trying to really get too deep into reviews aside from what's legal and fair according to TOS. What I really like to focus on is winning based on visual differentiation, winning based on visual quality, because we all know price, if you're going just trying to compete on price, that's going to be a race to the bottom. We all know that there's review manipulation, and so if you're just focused solely on reviews, it's not a long-term strategy. But visual quality is that one thing that you can actually control, and it's one thing that the either other lazy sellers or potentially sellers from other countries, this is something that's actually, it takes work to do. It takes work to get right. And so you can really build a moat around your product just by focusing on visual quality and visual differentiation. And so when I'm talking about visual quality, what I'm really looking to do is to send a compelling and efficient visual message to a customer. What I want you to think about when you're thinking about either optimizing the design of your product or optimizing the look and feel of your listing is visual quality is going to come down to two components. 50% is how this thing looks, right? Just from a purely visual standpoint. And then 50% is about what information are you sending into the customer's brain and how efficient is that communication. And so that brings me to the crux of this framework, and that's how to hack your customer's brain. And so I like to start off with a little analogy here, right? Very similar to hackers in real life. And so if a hacker in real life, like, what are they actually doing? What's their goal and what's their process? Well, first thing that they're going to do is they're going to gain access to your system, right? Like if I'm a hacker, I'm trying to get someone's, credit card, or I'm trying to get into their computer. First thing that I'm going to have to do is gain access to their system. And so maybe I sneak into their house, I grab the laptop, or I send some software that gets installed onto their computer, and it gives me access into the actual computer itself. Once I've gained access, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to start influencing what's going on. Maybe I'm going to go look around and try to find personal information. Maybe I'm going to change different settings. I'm going to start making these different actions to give me some kind of end result that I want. With the last step obviously being to profit, right? You're going to take some money, you're going to get some photos. I don't know really what hackers do. I'm not a hacker unless it comes to visual optimization hacking. The cool thing is that I see a very, very similar process to when we're actually working with customers, right? And there's many different ways here, and I'm going to go through some of those today on how we as sellers can leverage the same tactics, and I put that in parentheses, ethically, right? We're not really hacking anyone, but we're going to do this to boost your conversion rate and to boost your sales and to boost that connection that you have with the customer that's going to get them to buy. And it's going to be the same process: access, influence, and profit. So starting first with access, right? The cool thing is that when someone is shopping on your listing, right, when they're looking for a product, when they see your product from that first page of search results, the cool thing is you actually already have access to the most powerful computer in the world, and that's the human brain. Now you might be rolling your eyes and thinking like, okay, Anthony, what the heck are you talking about? And so I want to make a really important distinction here. And what you have to understand about how the human brain works is that the human brain is literally a giant graphics processor, right? Almost all of the information that's transmitted through the brain is visual. And in fact, the brain is doing this so fast, this is happening faster than you can even consciously realize. The human brain is going to process an image 60,000 times faster than text. And so basically what this means from the access standpoint is that the minute someone's in front of their mobile device, they're in front of their computer, and they're looking at your listing, as long as their eyeballs are open, their brain is automatically processing everything on that page, anything they're looking at the time, anything they're looking at the time, and that information is going straight into their brain, right? It's like you have a direct access point into the chief decision maker about whether or not they're going to buy the product. And you have a direct access point that can influence what they're going to do. So we've understood that the brain is visual. You have access when someone's on your listing. The next thing that we want to talk about is influence. And so the reason I gave this statistic earlier is to set a baseline, right? The average conversion rate for a prime shopper is 74%. And you'll see the text above is saying that a shopper with the intent to buy the product will buy a product. It's just a question of whether or not they buy your product. So I just want to really reiterate this. By the time that someone goes to Amazon, they type the product into the search bar, they have the intent to buy that product, right? If they're searching for a red spatula, they take out their laptop, they open up the phone, they type in red spatula into the search bar, they click into your listing or potentially a competitor's listing. You have to understand that they will, 74% of the time on average, which means sometimes it's going to be higher, sometimes it's going to be slightly lower, 74% of the time they will buy a product. The question is, are they going to buy your red spatula or are they going to buy someone else's red spatula? And so when you take this into consideration, and this is why this is in the part about influence, is you have to understand that what your goal is you've gained access to the customer's brain. Your goal is now you've got that direct line of communication. Your goal is to influence them to help their brain solve this equation, right? Someone's come to Amazon with the intent to buy a product, most likely because they have some type of problem, right? And then what their brain needs to satisfy is that, okay, I've got this problem, and then they have to ask themselves, will buying this product solve that problem? And then after I click that add to cart or that buy now button, after I click this, will I be better off? And so getting back to the point about the brain being a giant graphics processor, you have to understand that every second that the customer's eyeballs are open, every minute that they're scrolling through the listing, clicking through your image gallery, looking at what the physical product is itself, the brain is going through this checklist rather. And there's only two decisions. They're either going to buy the product or they're going to bounce, right? There's no middle options. It's just one of the two. And so the way that I've really broken down this checklist into the most simple form is this is what the brain is trying to solve on that checklist. They're trying to ask themselves, is this a reputable seller? Does this product have the features I need to solve my specific problem? Is this specific product, is your product better than the competitors? And then lastly, will I have any issues with this product after buying it? And I brought this up a little bit already, but the way that you're going to do this, the way you're going to influence the brain, two things, about 50-50. One, is this visually impressive? And two, how well does this thing that they're looking at the time, how quickly does this conduct the information into the brain, which allows them to make this checklist and to have their brain solve that equation? And so your goal as a seller is you want to, from the very minute that they see your product, right, you should be trying to engage them and convince them to consume as much visual content as possible. So starting with the actual product design itself, moving on to the main image, maybe your title, getting them into that listing, getting them through your image gallery, getting them through your A+ content, maybe watching some videos, looking at your reviews. What you have to understand is every second that the customer is looking at the information on your listing, right, what you're doing, you're gaining access and you're influencing their behavior on whether or not they're going to make that buying action in the end. So one really important distinction as well to understand is who is the shopper who's actually buying this product. And a lot of us as sellers, we have this expectation that the shopper looks like this, right? They're sitting there, they've got their laptop open, a smile on their face, and they've got their credit card out and they're ready to buy. But in reality, what's happening is when someone's shopping on Amazon, they're engaging in distracted shopping, right? They're not sitting there with their credit card out. What more likely is happening in reality is that they're very distracted. The phone's going off. The kids are running around in the background. The dog's barking. It's been a crazy year with COVID. And so the reality is that this person's very, very distracted, and you have a minimal amount of time to convey the information that you need before they're going to get bored, they're going to get confused, they're going to get distracted, and then they're going to bounce and end up buying a competitor's product. And so one of the methodologies that I really want you to consider when you're going through optimization, and it can be with your product, it can be with your listing itself, is you have to understand that as much as sellers, we would like to have every potential customer sit down in the chair and they're required to see every image in the image gallery, they're required to read every line of text we have and read our A+ content. The reality is that's just not what happens. If you can kind of imagine that 100% of the people obviously are going to see your main image, you would expect that there's going to be some kind of drop off by the time that you get down here to image number 6, or in some cases, image number 7. Same thing with your A+ content, same thing with your bullets, right? Not everyone is going to see everything. What my personal goal is I want to think, okay, I know that if I can show more things, if I can get someone all the way through my image gallery, if they can see my A+ content, if they can watch the video, the more things that I can get into my customer's brain, the higher probability that their brain is going to satisfy that checklist and they're going to click add to cart. And so what I'm constantly trying to do is to move this curve over and say, okay, instead of getting 10% of the people to the last image, how can I engage them, make the information simple enough so that they keep clicking through to get 50% of the people to see image 6, or maybe even better, to get 70% of the people to see image 6. And so just to reiterate, there's only two options for a potential customer. They're either going to bounce or they're going to buy. What you have to understand from a conversion optimization standpoint is that the default is not for them to buy the product. The default is for them to go to the page of search results, to open up 4 or 5 different tabs, and to look around, right? The default is for them to bounce. And so you've got to shift that over. You've got to influence them to see as much as possible, and you have to convince them to buy. I've shown this equation before. I think I've made the point, but you really have to help the brain solidify this checklist. Okay, I've got a problem. Buying this product is going to solve the problem, and after I buy the product, I'm going to be better off. I'm not going to have any issues. So we've talked about access. We've talked about influence. Let's talk about profit, right? This is obviously the goal. We're here to make a little bit of money. Hopefully create brands that are awesome brands that are going to be around for a long time and people are really going to love as well. And so the profit side is really metrics driven. And when I first started giving different versions of this presentation about a year and a half ago, the advice that I would give to people is to say you should have a base conversion rate of about 8%, a good conversion rate of about 20%, and a great conversion rate of about 40%. As time went on and people started to take this stuff more and more seriously, I've seen these numbers jump, right? Up to even a 65+% of a great conversion rate. Now this is going to probably, maybe if you're currently selling, maybe you've been selling for a while, you might see this. This is the numbers that I'm actually recommending now. Back when I used to have my agency, we could get people onto the first page of search results reliably with a 45% conversion rate. You can still do that. In some categories, you might be able to actually get on page one with 45%. But what I'm really trying to target now is about a 65 to an 85+% conversion rate. And I'm going to give you some tactics on how you can actually do that. Now, if you're sitting there and you're like, this is just nuts, right? This is not possible. Just try to remind yourself that the average conversion rate for an Amazon Prime shopper is 74%. So a real target conversion rate of 65%, it's not so crazy if you think about it. Remember, if someone's shopping, if they've made it to your listing, unless you have a very expensive, a technical product or something that's, like a home decor item and someone's searching for some kind of decoration they're going to put in their home, obviously they're going to shop around. They're going to try to figure which one is best for them. But if you're selling a very simple product that solves a very simple purpose, it would make sense that if someone gets to your listing and you can convince them, help their brain to satisfy that checklist, it would make sense that you could get conversion rates of 65+%. I'm going to give some examples of how to actually do this later, but this is actually from a screenshot of my seller account. And this is unit session percentage. Amazon inside of their platform doesn't really say conversion rate, but they give you this unit session percentage. And so just to show that this is possible, and I'll give you some examples of how you can actually get your unit session percentage above 100%, but you'll see these are all pretty high, and this is across a pretty diverse product line. And we're going to walk through some of these examples today. So the good news, though, is that as a seller, you've got plenty of tools in your arsenal. There's all these different things that you can optimize to really get that information into the customer's brain and really up that conversion rate. And we're going to cover all of these today. So that was the first half of the presentation. I think we're doing okay on time. This is going to be strategies, right? These are the things that you can actually start doing right now to go and get this done. So let's start off with main image. So a lot of these are things that I've either learned myself. I get to support a lot of our customers at PickFu, and we work with all of the big aggregators. We work with some of the largest sellers in the space. In fact, the majority of the top Amazon 500 sellers are using PickFu aggressively. And so all of these things, you're going to see examples of PickFu polls on the screen, but I promise it's not just one example. I've run these time and time and time again, and it's always the same stuff. So number one is, with your main image, allow the customer to visualize the product in action. So think again about, okay, we're trying to get as much information into the customer's brain as possible. So it's very easy to see why option A is so strong, right? Even if someone has the intent to buy, they've landed on the first page of search results, if they see option B, how much information is that transmitting to the brain, right? It's like this product on a white background. Is this a tool I might find in my workshop? No, option A is very clear. This is clearly used. You're going to rotate this handle and you're going to peel off the exterior of the apple. And in fact, you're actually going to slice the apple into pieces, right? It's got these bright green apples. It's very visually impressive. It takes your eyes to the listing. And so what I'm going to do is, when I'm trying to optimize these different things, I'm going to try different versions. And kind of what I saw in this PickFu test is the good version is just the product on the white background. The better version is, okay, we're showing the apple being peeled, and then the best version is not only the apple being peeled, but now we've got the stack of apples to the right-hand side, and they're much more vibrant. They're much more green. They're really eye-catching. And so think about what we were saying earlier. You've got these two halves of conversion optimization. You've got visual appeal, and you've got transfer of information. And so it's very clear here to see that this is achieving both of those. It's not only visually appealing, but it's transferring very clear and easy to understand information about what this product does, right? Faster than your customers is even going to realize this is happening. Their brain is going to process that, and it's going to understand what it's looking at right away. And so the cool thing is that you can come up with many different versions to actually test, right? All three of these images are trying to show the product in use for this hula hoop. But what you'll notice is that there's strong preference when we ran a PickFu poll to option A, right? And why is this? I don't always necessarily know why something is going to win or if something's going to win, but when you go and read the feedback in the PickFu polls, what they're going to say is that they like to see the woman's face. They see the full body shot. It's much more holistic, right? And so I'm going to try to think about these things when doing these optimizations for main image. The other thing that you can do with your main image to make some serious gains is just try different positioning in the layout of the product itself. Again, when I ran this poll, I wasn't necessarily sure which one was going to win, but it came back that option B was the winner, right? And basically what we've seen time and time again is that if you can have a very clean and symmetrical layout of the product that clearly shows everything that's included, that has anything that's text-based up to the front, it's not only going to be more visually appealing, but again, think about how clear this is transmitting information into your brain. I can see the derma roller, I can see the beard wash, I can see the beard, I can't really see the beard oil and the beard balm, right? Maybe I would even shift that bottle a little bit over so I could transmit more clear information into the customer's brain, right? These are very, very small tweaks, and it might seem like when you're going through this optimization process that like, what am I even doing? Is this really going to move the needle? And the answer is yes, it does move. It definitely does move the needle. Another best practice is whenever you can, try to include packaging in your main image, right? We all know that Amazon Terms of Service does not allow text to be in your main image. So a really clever way around that is by putting your packaging in. And so this glow-in-the-dark blanket is a great example, right? Option B and option A are very, very similar. The difference is now we've got that text there. And so when someone's looking at this, they've typed in glow-in-the-dark blanket into Amazon, right? And now the first thing that they see, one of the images in search results, are the words that they're expecting. They know they're going to see a glow-in-the-dark blanket, but now that information is getting right into the brain. So not only is it more aesthetically pleasing, but it's doing a better job of transmitting information. What I like to do as well is just mess around with different small variations. This is just purely for aesthetic appeal in this example, but we've got this dog chew toy. And right now I'm trying to see, okay, I've got this white dog or I've got this black dog, right? I don't know why the black dog is winning. I think I could even go find examples of dogs that are cuter. I think I could go in with renders and make that dog toy in the dog's mouth look much more realistic. But the point is, again, 50-50 here in terms of what's important in images. This one's focusing on aesthetic appeal. So how can I make this more aesthetically pleasing? One key thing that I do really like to emphasize here, because this is a question I get all the time, is people say, well, like, Anthony, can you really do this in your main image? I thought you were just supposed to show the product on a white background. You can't have props in there. You can't have a dog. You can't show the packaging. And I hate to say it, but it's just not true, right? If you actually look at the terms of service, it is slightly different depending on what product category, but a very common version of the terms of service you'll see is this. And I've highlighted the words that are very, very important. And what they say specifically about the main image is that the image must not contain gratuitous or confusing additional objects, right? And so this is coming from a little bit of perspective as a former Amazonian. One thing I can tell you is when I was working there, they drilled into your head every single day that the goal of Amazon is to be the most #1 customer-centric company in the world. So how can you take this and apply this to what you're doing and navigating TOS? Is ask yourself, is what I'm doing in my main image, is it intentionally distracting? Is it clickbaity? Is it not adding much value to the customer? Or is it helping them to actually make a better buying decision, right? Helping them to better understand what's going to be in the listing if I click into this image. And if you're erring on the side that is actually on the side of customer centricity, I think the reason Amazon allows so many of these, what people would say are main image violations, is because it actually does a better job of communicating what the product does, and it gives a better buying experience. It's not clickbaity, it's not distracting. So one big takeaway that, go ahead, yep.
Oh, so actually, sorry. It's funny that you flipped to this page. I was just gonna say, and sorry to interject, but like, I also look when I'm looking at, call it grayish areas, or maybe not purely letter of the law terms of service. There's a difference between jaywalking and murder when it comes to Amazon. Where if I'm like paying Anthony, he's my brother, and we use the same computer, and he gives me a review, like that's the Amazon equivalent of murder, and it's very hard to come back from. But jaywalking, it's kind of like they'll suppress it, and then as long as you have alerts, which we talk about in the course in the operations module, you can get another image back up in 10 minutes, and then you're good to go. I was going to say that on the last slide, but it looks like you're just going to say that on this slide. But I think we're obviously perfectly aligned when it comes to this.
No, and Adam, that was a perfect interjection there too, because this is a point that I think really should be made. I've had many, okay, so here's the takeaway, right, is that main image TOS violations, they do not result in performance notifications. You're not going to get suspended. The only thing that's going to happen is the image that is in violation is going to get suppressed, and then you're going to have to put up a new one, right? So as long as you've got a backup image ready, you're good to go. It's not going to be any problem. And like Adam said, if you've got alerts set up, you can get a new one up almost right away. I've gotten many images suppressed On a regular basis, we get images suppressed. We upload things that we know are on the gray area, and we just keep uploading it until it goes through. And then like magic, after 20 different tries and moving things around, it ends up working. And so again, err on the side of caution. I'm going to give you some tips though about how you can actually avoid even having the images suppressed. What you have to understand about these terms of service violations for main images is there's not someone sitting on a computer manually going through and doing these. This is a computer automated bot that goes through and it's searching for two things. It's searching for white space and it's searching for text. And so in this example here on the left-hand side, this would be extremely risky because the bot is going to go through, it's going to see the white space and it's going to say, these are decals, right? This is against terms of service. Versus if you actually have this is what we call eye candy. If you have the eye candy and it's connected digitally to the product, the bot is going to have a much more difficult time of identifying that these are actually separate items, and it's going to think it's all part of the product, right? So I want to be very clear. This is very risky. This is much, much less risky. Like I say, I'm consistently on my brands. I'm pushing the lines to see what Amazon is going to allow stand up. If you're in your product category and you're seeing a lot of people do this, right? Clearly Amazon is not either enforcing it or they think it's actually better for the customer. And so what I always recommend doing is feel free to come up with a version that's a little bit less safe, but then have a backup ready to go. So like we were saying earlier, if your main image gets suppressed, no problem, you get that notification and then you put up the one that's very safe, right? Very low risk to do. Another really interesting thing that I've seen recently that people are doing more and more, I saw this for the first time about 8 months ago, is that people are putting on this image eye candy, but it looks like it's actually part of the product. And so when I first saw this, I actually thought that it was hard to tell that this 22 grams of protein in this mint chocolate chip wasn't part of the product packaging, but it's actually not. And so what's very interesting here is they've got the product, but they've taken two really big factors of the product and they've put it in a way that, again, lets the brain really process what's going on, right? What's the flavor? How much protein in this? And what's very interesting about this is when I found this example like 8 months ago, and I just spent hours searching through Amazon trying to figure out like, okay, what are people doing? Like what's cool? What could potentially work for my own products or, you know, what can help out our clients? What was very interesting is like a handful of months ago, they were the only people actually doing this. But now if I go to the search results for this product, which is this whey protein, so many people are doing this with now trying to put this extra thing on to trick the bots. We're also seeing more and more people doing what I call is like hyper-realistic packaging. And so obviously these cutting boards are not actually shipped in this manner. They're not going to be 3 wide. That would destroy your dimensional weight. But what they're doing is they're kind of making this packaging wider and making the products wider so that they can put some really important information about the product, right? I want to emphasize this is not real, but it works, right? And why does it work? Because it's giving you that extra text. It's showing the logo. It's showing the color variations that this product is available in. I've seen this more and more. I actually bought these bamboo cutting boards for myself, and it doesn't ship with this. But the thing is, if you're selling a product that's pretty high quality, you got to think about what does someone do with the packaging when they get it. I don't actually really recommend doing this. I recommend spend the extra few cents and really put a packaging wrap on there. But it is something to think about of if maybe I'm thinking about adding new product packaging, could I go and put my main image to display product packaging, then I find that it's doing very well, and then, you know, change my inventory items. I've been seeing this more and more with people using this to test different versions of their packaging. So again, I wouldn't go from no product packaging to showing packaging in your main image. But if I had a more outdated version of this packaging and I'm like, now I want to try something new, then I could go and potentially put up a render, see how the new one does, and then print the packaging after that. What I will say is there's this new tool inside of Amazon, which is called Manage Your Experiments. And what I've found here is that because there's a human that actually approves the experiment itself, you have to type out what your experiment is about and you have to type out a hypothesis. It's more likely that you're going to be able to push this line on gray area. And when you're doing this, when you're writing out your hypothesis, think about how you can write it in a way that the Amazon staff has been trained, likely in terms of their TOS. So if you're going to go and do this and you're going to push boundaries and maybe try to test a few different options of your product packaging from your managed experiments when you're A/B testing inside of Amazon. I'm not going to say, hey, I want to try a green version of this packaging versus an orange because it's going to make me more money. You're going to say, I'm going to look to test a green version of the packaging because this is going to more relate to what the product is. It's going to give a better buying experience to the customer. Whatever words you can use to think from a customer centricity standpoint is much more likely to get approved because there's someone somewhere in the world that's approving these, and they're going to be like, okay, I'm reading the hypothesis. They're going to look over, and I remember at Amazon, they would have literally training guides at every station of anyone working anywhere, and they're going to have like a little SOP that they're following, and when they see certain words, they're going to be like, oh, they want to make things better for the customer, approve, versus like, I'm here just trying to make money. So think about that. It's like a little insider hack. The last thing I'll say here is a concept that I call creative convergence, and it's basically the thought that on the Amazon platform, over any long enough time frame, sellers are going to start to do the exact same thing. And so the point here is to move quickly because these optimizations, anything you're doing, especially with main image, they're very easy to copy. And I'm going to show you an example here. So about a year ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, when I first did this presentation, I found examples of a massage gun on page 1 that had the left image for their main image, right? And there was a few people that had the more well-designed main image, where it was like the product, the case, and all the different attachments. If I go to page 1 today, this is what I'm going to see, right? Everyone doing the exact same thing. So the motivation is, if you are selling in a product category and your first page of search results doesn't look like this, go and move quick, because 6 months to a year from now, it's going to all start to look very, very similar. And so if you can get a gain there, you can increase your ranking, increase your BSR, like whatever you're looking for, I would recommend move quick, because yeah, there's going to be some point of creative convergence. The next thing I want to talk about is product packaging. I recommend starting this and investing in this as early as you possibly can in the product launch cycle. I find, in my personal opinion, that product packaging is potentially one of the things that can give you the highest ROI dollar for dollar spent and really create a brand that's going to be valuable and potentially good for selling later down the road. And so we have a really great example, a case study that we did with Thrasio. I'm sure most people have heard about Thrasio, but basically the case study is this. They acquired this brand, Angry Orange, for $2 million, and they had this product packaging on it, right? I think a lot of us would be really happy to have a $2 million brand, but they bought this, and they're like, okay, we're going to make this better. And one of the first things that they did was they optimized the product packaging. And when they optimized the product packaging to this design on the right-hand side, overnight their sales went from $2 million to more than $20 million. And so, okay, when I'm going through the product development phase, when I'm designing my product packaging, what a lot of people are going to say is like, okay, cool, I'm going to do what Thrasio did. I'm going to go and make this bright, beautiful orange bottle. I'm going to go to a designer and I'm going to say, make me a beautiful bottle. And they think that that's actually how it works. But in reality, this is what Thrasio actually did. They didn't just go and say, make me one version of the bottle. They went and said, go make me a whole bunch of different versions. I think they went through 15 plus pick food tests, testing all these little different configurations, these different core elements on the bottle to see what did people like, what did people not like, how could we add more of what people liked and get rid of the things that people didn't like. And so the end result was this. They started at this bottle here with a bunch of crazy different font faces, this very strange, but I guess an angry orange. They've got all of these words for their common use cases, all of this text, just like a ton of information, way too much to be absorbed by the brain. And then if you look at the new bottle, of course, yeah, it's got this bright orange bottle. It looks really clean. It looks really good. But what they noticed is that, and this was from running a lot of pick food tests, what they noticed is that the brand name Angry Orange really didn't need to be very big. In fact, what people were much more interested in seeing were the words odor eliminator, what the product actually does. They didn't need to list out all of the use cases at the bottom, because what they found in research was that people were most using this as a pet deodorizer. So instead of showing all of the use cases, they just showed the dog and the cat as an icon, right? And so what can you do to simplify the information, right? To give better and faster transmission of information into the customer's brain. And how can I do that while making it more visually appealing? And so, yeah, this is like with all creative process in general, but specifically with packaging, specifically with product design. Don't just go with the first thing that you see. If you're sourcing and launching a new product and they're like, this is the packaging that we use, that your manufacturer sends, Don't just take that and be like, okay, cool, I'm going to use this. Go and say, okay, this is a good starting point, but how can I make what the manufacturer has given me, how can I make that much better? How can I make it better for visual appeal and aesthetics? How can I make it better for flow of information? And so if you change your team's creative mindset to focusing on high volume of variations, not just giving me one option, but multiple options that I can kind of work through, you're going to have much better results. And what you're... Am I good? And what you're going to find here is, like, if you're running PickFu tests to help determine, I really recommend using PickFu early on in your process. It'll save you a lot of money. It'll save you from getting a lot of inventory that ultimately won't sell. But basically what you want to do is you want to put this up into PickFu, and you want to have your old or original design. And ideally, once you've gone through some variations, your new version should beat your old version about 70-30. That's what I'm really looking for. This was an exceptional example of when the new creative assets actually beat the old ones 90% to 10%. I think that probably has something to do with their success. If you're getting to the point where, let's say you're optimizing your packaging and you're getting something closer to a 50-50 split, what that probably means is that the two options that you have are quite similar. And either they're both really good, right? Or they're both about the same. So if I'm like trying to change my packaging and I'm going from this to this, maybe I'd say I would try to keep optimizing this version until this one's going to beat this one by 70-30. I'd try to keep really diving into that. And you can use that anywhere throughout your product development process, but packaging is a good place to start, because once you do your packaging, I see all the time sellers launch a product, they go with like some really boring packaging, and then they're like, why isn't my stuff converting? And now they have to sell, like, you know, their MOQ is 500 or 1,000 units, and now they have to sell through all of that before they can even change their packaging. They've lost that honeymoon period. Packaging, especially if your product is the packaging, like a supplement, consumer packaged good, this is something you want to get right from the beginning. Okay, so the next section here is all about infographics. I'm going to roll through these pretty quick. The biggest tip that I can give you, and it's going to relate heavily into the things that I've talked about earlier, is apply the 5-second test to see which graphic is going to convey the clearest message. Again, think, we got visual appeal and we've got flow of information. And the whole concept behind the 5-second test is, if I take this graphic and I show it to someone who has no knowledge of the product, and I let them look at it for 5 seconds, and then I take it away and I say, what was the point of this graphic? If they tell you an answer that is like far different from what you thought it should be, then what do you think is going to happen when someone who's just seeing your product for the first time lands on the page? They're in that distracted environment. Do you think they're going to retain the messages? Do you think their brain is going to be able to digest the information and then check off those boxes in the head? Probably not. And so what I've done here is all 4 of these graphics are trying to do the exact same thing. They're trying to show the hot and cold insulating capabilities of this water bottle. And then you'll notice that option C is the winner, right? This does the best job of combining aesthetics and flow of information, right? Again, think about, now you're at that influence part. You want to influence how the customer is making decisions. A big factor of this product is hot and cold insulating capabilities. Option C is the winner. And so this is something you can go and do right now if you're currently selling, is if you've got an infographic, go find the equivalent version of that infographic on your competitors' listings, put it into PickFu and see how it handles, right? If it's like at the bottom, go and see, why do people like, you know, let's say you're option D, this is your infographic, and this is like your top competitor, right? Maybe it's a little bit of a slap in the face, but don't think, hey, I'm terrible, I'm awful. This is a really good opportunity, because now you can go through and you can read the responses on the PickFu results, and you can see, why do people like this so much? How can I take this information and how can I apply that to my own graphic? Why do people dislike this one so much? How can I take that information and make sure my graphic avoids having those same pitfalls? I think I actually have a better example of the click test in here, so I'll hold off on that. It's a few slides down. Again, thinking about not just visual appeal, but also flow of information. Can anyone guess here why the image on the right is going to be better than the image on the left? Well, it's because it goes above and beyond to explain the context of the photo, right? Both of these are health-related products, and it's trying to show you that with their product, right, which is obviously the one that shows more, you can eat more of these things, and it's going to be the same as eating less of the unhealthy option. But the reason this one is so much more powerful is it doesn't rely just on the images to make that happen. It shows you exactly here. It doesn't make the brain do any calculations here. It's like straight information. Okay, 5-second test. If I'm going to give the one on the left to someone versus the one on the right, which one do you think I'm going to have a higher probability that someone's really going to understand what the graphic is? Obviously the right. And so think about this, right? It's like just saying, okay, both piles have the same amount of sugar. They've got their healthy Sour Patch Kids, and then they've got, you know, real Sour Patch Kids, right? And so think, how can I create something that's visually impressive, but how can I, more importantly, transfer that information as quickly and as efficiently into the brain to help the customer check those boxes in their head? A really good point, too, is if you're still using these graphics on the left, these competitor comparison graphics, my agency used to make a bunch of those back in the day. I do not recommend this anymore. There's way too much going on, and I really don't believe that anyone believes that all three of these competitors are like completely terrible and yours is completely amazing. Stick to one singular feature, right? And so this is a good example of this phone holder, and it's showing like, okay, ours isn't going to block the view, theirs is going to block your view. One singular thing, easy for the brain to digest, visually appealing, done. Really easy to set up too. You can do this for like, you know, very little effort. You can take this slide, send it to your designer and say, make us this for this feature of the product. Just ours versus theirs product, or a verse in the middle. Very easy to do, very effective. As well, too, if you're ever making a sizing infographic, I always recommend giving a visual reference point. Our brain doesn't really think in terms of like how big is 0.4 inches, how long is 2 feet. What it does think about is reference points of how big is something relative to something we know. So 0.4 inches means much more if I'm showing it between someone's fingers, right? 2 feet means much more if I'm showing it in relation to like, okay, that's like a pretty long desk. And so now, again, having the customer check off the boxes in their head, you can say something's 0.4 inches, but if I show how slim it is, it's like, okay, I'm thinking about putting this thing in my pocket. It'll fit. Oh, I'm thinking about using this cable on my desk or on my nightstand, and it's like far away. Okay, cool. This is going to be suitable for my needs. If there's any doubt there, or if there's any confusion, remember, the default is not for the customer to buy. The default is for the customer to bounce. So don't make the brain have questions. Don't make it have confusion. Don't make it have any doubt. Another thing that you can do, if you remember the slide I showed earlier of like the drop off in terms of who's going to view your images and what percentage of people are going to view your images, a really great thing you can do is either applying branding across your image gallery or having some kind of consistent theme. It's going to make it feel much more like a slideshow. They're much more likely to keep clicking to see all 6 or 7 of your images versus if they're a bunch of scattered images that don't look like they're related and there's different colors and there's a whole bunch of different things going on. They might only get 1 or 2 images in and be like, their brain's not going to see what's going on. This is too confusing. And then what are they going to do? They're going to bounce and they're going to go to a competitor listing. Another really great way that you can work with how the brain already works is these before and after scenarios, right? Like your brain wants to see this like end result of things. And so this is a really great graphic here. It's showing very easily the before and after of using this car vacuum. And so it's like, it's a very, like, obviously this is what the before is, this is what the after is. And so imagine you're trying to sell a dish selling rack. If I wanted to create a very simple template, I would show, like, put the rack in the middle, excuse me, and then I would show like, okay, before, your kitchen's going to be super dirty and disorganized. After, everything's going to be really clean and organized, right? Their brain is obviously going to gravitate to be like, that's how I want my life to be. That's how I want my kitchen to be. This is how I want my car to be. And I know what my car looks like right now. Like, I've seen between the seats. I've got kids. They'll relate to that. And so when they see this, their brain's like, okay, key thing, is this going to make my life better? Yes, right? It's going to get rid of those gummy worms and the pretzels and the salt and the dog hair or whatever it is, right? And it can do all of that. So work with the brain. The other thing too is when you're making these what I call anatomy graphics, don't just say what the feature is of the product. Explain why it matters. Explain why they should care. And so this is a really great example here. Like, they're not just telling you extension tube. They're telling you, okay, why do I care about an extension tube? I care about it for under seats, cracks, and crevices, right? Again, don't make the brain do any extra thinking. Just give it all to them. Here's the feature. Here's why it matters. And do that in the graphic itself. Another really great thing that you can do, just a template for an infographic, is allow the customer to visualize various in-use scenarios. And so if I've got this posture corrector here, what I want to have happen, if someone is searching for the product, they're getting a posture corrector and they're like, I'm going to use this at the office. What happens? They look at this and they're like, oh, there's the office. This product is for me. Let me add it to my cart. I'm going to use it for sports. Okay, that's for me. Let me go and add it to my cart. A very simple graphic to make. Put the product in the center, 4 different scenarios. Don't have to be custom lifestyle. You can just use stock photos. The brain is going to reference. It's going to understand that, okay, we're talking about using this posture corrector for the office. You don't actually have to go and, show someone with the posture corrector on. The brain's going to make that gap. I think this is the last one I have here in terms of infographics, and this is just another really great thing to do. Amazon Terms of Service is very strict that you cannot put customer testimonials in your graphics, and it's not because they don't want you showing off your best reviews. It's because they're worried that the specific review that you've put up could have been potentially manipulated, it could be taken down, and it's the same way that they don't want you to put something related to your pricing in your graphics. They want the graphics to be things that are actually true. And so this would be very, very risky. What I've found myself doing, and these convert very well, is instead of putting in a customer review, I'm going to put in a picture of the product, I'm going to put in 5 stars, and then I'm going to put in just a couple of words that are related to key objections related to the product. So for Omega Fish Oil, love the taste, no stinky breath, bottle lasts forever, 5 stars. I don't need to go and put a verified Amazon 5-star review. The brain's going to put this all together. And in fact, instead of just showing one thing that is positive about your product, you're going to show, potentially 2 to 3 different ones. It's very minimal, very easy to digest. And it's going to help the customer check that last box at the bottom was, am I going to have any issues after buying this product? And this is helping to overcome all of those objections. Like, oh, sweet, this Nordic Naturals fish oil, this is the one to get because I was actually worried about the bad breath. I was actually worried about the taste. I was actually worried if this is a big enough bottle for me. Now I've overcome 3 of those objections, and I've done that with one single graphic that's very easy to digest and somewhat visually appealing. I just made that in Google Slides here, so your designer can do much better. If you want some tips on how to get a higher than 100% unit session percentage, this is a slam dunk and it works really well for certain products. What you have to understand is that Amazon doesn't give you a conversion rate metric. They call it unit session percentage. And it actually means that how many people come onto the listing versus how many people buy the product. And so for example, if you have 2 visitors and they make 1 purchase, that's a 50% unit session percentage. 1 visitor, 1 purchase, 100, and 1 visitor, 2 purchases, 200%. And so some of these products that we have that are very, very high conversion rates, you'll see that we're getting a large portion of sales from B2B, right? Like almost 40%. And so what we're going to do there is in my second image, if I'm just trying to boost up unit session percentage, a product that I was working with recently was nitrile gloves. And there was a lot of hair salons that were using these for hair salons. And so we would make the second graphic specifically related to B2B sales. And we'd say hair salon owners, purchase 2+ orders and you'll get special business pricing. Anyone can get this pricing. You just add 2+ orders on. But what it's going to do is it's going to encourage someone to buy more. When we get into the holidays for Q4, if you have a giftable item, I had a product recently, one of my own personal products, and it was, well, I won't get into it too much, but basically it was there was something to be done, and I was we created a graphic, and it was friends don't let friends not have this product. It was better than that, but I don't want to reveal what the product was. But basically, we're going to use that as the second graphic when we get around to the holidays with the sole purpose of driving up this unit session percentage. Because what did we say earlier? The key factor in terms of Amazon and how the algorithm is actually calculated is related to conversion rate, is related to unit session percentage. So if I can get these bad boys up 50, 60, 70, 80, even 100+%, that's going to be very hard for my competitors to compete with. I was showing an example of a click test earlier. This is definitely the last example for infographics, and I haven't shared this very often. In fact, I only shared this earlier today at another talk, so this is very new stuff. How do you actually determine what your image order is, right? You've gone through, you've optimized, you've created things that are visually appealing, you've created things that have a good flow of information, but how do you actually determine what order to put your images in? And so here's a recommendation that I'll make. I don't sell this product. I don't think this person's a PickFood client. I went earlier today, I downloaded the 5 images, aside from their main image, but the 5 infographics they had in their gallery. And what I did is I just put them into a Google slide. I guess I'm revealing a little bit right now. But what I did is I dropped them into a Google slide and I just put little number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on this. And then I uploaded it into PickFood under a test that we have called a click test. And basically, I asked the question, which 2 images in this gallery would be most effective in convincing you to purchase these meat claws? And then people are going to click on their top 2. And so basically what I've done here, if you're in PickFood, you can actually drag over this and it'll show you 35 clicks, 67 clicks. It'll show you the exact number. And then I'm going to order my images to match that, right? So I believe it was this one was first, this one was second, this one was third, this one was fourth, this one was fifth, right? So you don't get this kind of information inside of Amazon. They don't give you this, but this is a great way to understand, okay, again, if someone is going to, 100% of people are going to see the main image, there's going to be some drop off. How can I make sure that the most important and the most impactful graphics are going to be first in the gallery, right? Or earlier on in the gallery. That way, if someone only gets 3 through, they've seen this one, they've seen this one, and they've seen this one. They can drop out over the next 2, but they've already seen the top 3 points, or at least what people feel are the most impactful. So that's a pretty good tip there. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. Lifestyle images. Adam, I hope I'm okay on time. Am I good to keep going?
Man, keep going. Yeah, as long as you need. You're hitting like, not even home runs. You're hitting grand slams after grand slams. I'm so
happy to hear it.
Dude, you're
okay,
a legend.
Cool. We'll keep this
keep on
doing
doing
it. Next one is lifestyle images. Lifestyle images are really cool, but they're only really cool if you do them right. And so the thing about lifestyle images is they can also be pretty expensive. I'd recommend thinking about, hey, how much are your product costs, your inventory costs? It's worth something investing in. But if you're working on a limited budget, probably one of the best ways to get really effective lifestyle is from what I call either a monochromatic or a textured flat lay. And all this means is that you've got the product, you've got it on a solid background. Monochromatic just means one. You're going to drop the product there, you're going to put in some relevant props, and then you're going to take this top down. Almost any photographer can do this. You can actually do this with an iPhone. I've seen some people on TikTok that just do this crazy work, and all they're doing is just a little shadow box, a flat background, and they're just dropping these props on. So this is really, really easy to do. You can also do it with a textured surface, like here. Just go to a Home Depot, go to a Lowe's, and go buy fake wood, go buy fake marble. You can get real ones if you want, but I'm telling you, you can't tell a difference in photography. But just drop the product on there, right? Put in some succulents, put in some other things. Very, very cheap, very, very easy to get great looking lifestyle. You can do this with a very limited budget. If you are really going to go do a lifestyle shoot, don't do it unless you're ready to invest in getting everything right. So focus on what's the location, what's the props, what's the model going to look like, is the model going to match my target market. You'll notice in both of these photos here, this is really well concepted. They're beautiful images, but they're not just like showing someone in a random park holding this. They're showing someone in this beautiful mountain range. Their gear that they're wearing matches this, right? You'll notice here that her headphones are matching with the bottle. The product is this food, this nutrition bar here, this RX bar, but everything here is contrasting. The background looks beautiful. And so if you're going to do it right. Another way that you can use PicFu, when I do lifestyle shoots, if I'm doing a real one, it's going to be pretty expensive to do. I might spend anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 when it's all said and done, between like location fees and models and whatnot. And so this is actually from a case study that we did with Kevin King. We had 4 different agencies compete. They were looking to optimize his listing for this hand sanitizer brand, Germshark. And what one of the agencies did before going into the lifestyle shoot is they went and pulled like 3 different lifestyle images of people using hand sanitizer, and they asked which one of these scenarios is most relatable, which one do you prefer for using hand sanitizer in a public area, and people like this one. And so what the agency did is they took this as the inspiration. They knew people already had a connection to the way this looked, and then they went and recreated it, but they took it to the next level, right? They made the nails look better, they made the purse, the outfit. They really focused on the small details in the shoot, and the end result was, I think, pretty good. Another last little quick example here is related to 3D renders. And so I advise for a 3D rendering company, and I'm really excited at the work we get to do. 3D renders are basically a way to make a visualization, a digital visualization of basically what you would do with real photography. And so there's some really cool things that you can do here. And what I really like about 3D rendering is that you can go and create, like I was saying earlier, these high volume variations, not just going and getting one option, but getting multiple options for how you can do something and see what the customer likes the best. And so we had a client that wanted us to put a supplement store, and they wanted it to look like a pop-up in an open air mall. And so this was like a very rough concept that we started off with, right? Creating the store. None of this is real. Even the background, the background's a stock photo that we dropped it into, but obviously the store itself is not real. And then we played around with it a little. Well, I guess I don't have all the examples in here. I'll have to show you guys in I can do a whole nother talk on 3D rendering because we went through much more iterations on this, but you can play around with it. We also had this example here of we were using some stock photos, and normally what 3D rendering companies are going to do is they're going to get like a hand from another photo and try to get it around the product. But we were finding that with this spray bottle, it just wasn't working. We couldn't get the hand to look realistic. And so this is just the extent of what you can do with 3D rendering. The thing is that neither of these hands are real. They're actually based on a model that we bought. And so the model is really cool because you can adjust the hand position, you can adjust the thickness and the length and the, all these different factors about the fingers. And so you can make it look really realistic. And so the point is, like, you can do some cool stuff with 3D rendering. It's not that expensive. And the cool thing is, once you build out the model, like once you have this hand and it's working, once you have this store and it's working, you can change the factors at an unlimited level. It's really unlimited possibilities. This might not relate so much to, I don't know, maybe some people here are selling on Vendor Central, but just a quick tip is that if you are selling on Vendor Central, or if you have a dedicated account manager, you can actually go and put a 360-degree spin product render in your image gallery, and it doesn't take away from one of your images. It's actually something separate. It's called 360 view. And if you have a product that's like heavily interacted with by your hands, as is an example with this slime kit, we've seen this increase conversion rate by more than 70%, and that happens reliably. But you have to either be selling in Vendor Central, or you have to have a dedicated account manager. I think Amazon, they've been testing this for a couple years. I have a strong feeling, my prediction is that hopefully sometime in 2022, they're going to realize this is very valuable, and they're going to open this up to any brand registered seller. This is the last tip on infographics, is if you're selling a larger product line and you have multiple product variations, I try to reserve one of those images, at least ideally in the end of my gallery or somewhere in my A+, to showcase the entire product line, right? So this anchor, I know they've been stripped away. I don't think they're on Amazon anymore because they got in trouble. But basically they're showing the whole product line. So I might just be selling this charging block, but I'm trying to show like our brand sells all of these different things. And what's that doing? It's helping to build that reliability and the verification that, hey, I'm a legit seller. If I make and sell all these different colors of these yoga mats, then like clearly they can make one. Or if I'm selling all these different supplement brands, I'm more likely to think that it's going to be a reputable seller. Okay, so second to last section here, we have A+ content, and then we have video. This is a short section, but I will get right to the point, and that is that with A+ content, the name of the game is minimalism. Back in the day, we used to put so much information into our A+ content and a ton of text. That is not the way moving forward. What I always try to say is that you'll say more with a beautiful banner than you will with a paragraph. Seriously, right? If you're selling that red spatula, do you really need paragraphs and paragraphs of text to sell that thing? No, keep it simple, keep it visual. Right? Keep it to things in terms of flow of information that the brain is going to be easily able to digest. This is an example of an A+. Go ahead.
Sorry, Anthony. I just wanted to interject there. First of all, I 100% agree. I think telling that visual story with words is what you want to do with A+ content. But I think another thing just for folks to understand is that the image alt text that we can attach to A+, and we'll do a video on this so you can see it, that will index. It's not the highest priority in terms of value for your optimization and organic rank, but in the listing optimizer, we've got, I think it's like 5 or 6 different areas of the listing optimizer. That's where the alt text would be. So what we used to use for subject matter, we can now use the alt text. I think it's 150 characters. Don't quote me on this. I'll kind of confirm. But long story short, you can actually use words in the back end of these images to help index for your listing, that can give you keyword optimization, that can give you organic rank. The purpose of A+ is to sell the customer and to convert the customer, and to stand out and differentiate yourself from the competition, because a lot of them either don't do it or they don't do it well. So don't worry about keywords at all. There's a way to integrate that, and we'll talk about that more in the listing optimization section, so you guys know. But just wanted to caveat that don't worry about words for A+, other than them tying into the visual story and selling the product to convert it.
Yeah, and that's a really great point, Adam. Like, and it's clear that the direction Amazon's going with this, right? And Amazon makes these changes based on what they see in their top selling accounts, and they're saying to you that, like, hey, we want you to prioritize. You don't need to put in all this text now. We're going to give you the ability in the back end to put some of these, some of these things that are going to help you with ranking and searchability. That they want you to focus on the visual side because that's what the customer wants to see, right? They're trying to like cater to the customer. And so this is an example of an A+ content that's even more minimal, right? This is even more minimal than this. And so you can really scrap this down. And what I'm always encouraging my designers and my creative team to do is say, okay, we've got all of this stuff. How can we make this more visually appealing, but also how can we get a more concise transfer of information? Now, I will say that busy A+ layouts still do have a purpose, but they should be reserved for technical products. So this is, I think, from a GoPro. And so, like, yeah, that's pretty technical, can do a lot of different things. It's a little bit more expensive. But again, getting back to that red spatula example, do you really need to like show all of these different things and say all these things about your red spatula? You know, probably not. What I've found is actually a really strong format and template for this A+ is, you know, you've got this really beautiful bold header that's going to catch attention, and then underneath that, like kind of under the fold of the A+ are like 4 relatable situations with icons or photos where it's like someone can read this and be like, okay, I've been there, I've been there, I've been there. And the cool thing is with Manage Your Experiments, you can actually test your different versions of the A+ content. I recommend like switching one thing at a time, but try different versions of your header, right? Maybe it's on visual appeal, and then try to test those different relatable situations, whether you're testing the image, whether you're testing the icon. Just play around with that. It's free, it's easy to use, but it does take a lot of time. Those tests take a minimum of 1 month to execute. So like just get started on that, because if you can pick up 1% every month for 6 months, and your competitor doesn't do that, like they can't make up that time. It's going to take them 6 months to get to the same spot. So start testing. The last thing that I'll talk about today is video. First off, these pay-per-click videos, these Amazon advertising videos are very effective, especially in categories where your competitors aren't doing it, which is, I think, pretty still wide. More people have started to do it, but the best practices here are focus on what shows up in the search results as an ad. Is don't put a 90-second video in there. I think you can put up to 90 seconds, but don't do that. Keep it shorter, keep it to the point, and again, focus on flow of information. And so what I've found is that these text-based informational loops are incredibly effective. And so this is just 4 screenshots from a video that plays. This is a PPC ad for this product, and it really just rotates between these 4 things. And it's not just a static image, like the leaves are moving and there's some animations, but basically it's like on a 10-second loop, and it's just rotating between these 4 different screens. And so this is incredibly effective because now if someone's sitting there, they watch this 10-second loop, it's visually appealing, they're getting the really key important features of your product that you want them to see, and then it's just going to loop again, and they're going to watch it again and again. It's going to encourage them to click into the listing. So this is really effective. If you want to have something that's a little bit more, you know, showing the actual product, again, show the product in use, focus on the features, and keep it simple. You'll notice that both of these videos, they do not require audio to be understood. Same thing for this one, right? All it's doing is it's showing, this is for like some kind of fitness jump rope, showing the guy jumping rope, showing 3 features of the product, or 1 feature of the product. Girl jumping rope, feature of the product, right? It does that like 3 or 4 times, and it just does that on a loop. Just does it on a loop. Keep it really simple. Another really great tactic on video is focus on split screen presentation. These are very effective, and they're great for working on low budgets. You can go and get a video of someone, of your model, just in front of any kind of black background or even on a green screen. You just get some shots of the product in use, and then you're just going to combine this, right, with a stock video that is related to the feature, right? So the cool thing is my brain doesn't need to process. I see the words moisture wicking, I see the desert, and then I see these, you know, these gym boxers or whatever you would call the product, right? Like my brain doesn't need to do any extra work to understand that this is telling me if I'm wearing these boxers, they're going to do really good at wicking moisture, and it's going to be super dry down there, right? Super simple. It's visually appealing. It's cheap to do. And the brain is going to digest it. It's going to help them check the boxes or at least get into your listing. The last thing I'll say is that we've tested this a bunch, is that a spokesperson is almost always, actually, it is always going to convert better than a voiceover. And think about this, because I'm going to demystify something real quick, is like you can go to Fiverr or Upwork and you can get a professional voiceover in whatever accent you want, whatever language you want, and you can get that done for like $100. But if you go and spend $300 to $400, you can actually get someone that'll deliver your script speaking lines while like showing off the product and having some stock video, whatever you want to put in there. And it's the same way that in your listing images, you like to show faces. It's much better, rather than just hearing a voice in the background and showing some things related to your product. If you have someone speaking the lines, it just works much, much better. And so if you can, go from 100, get up to that $500 range, and you'll be very surprised with the voice talent that you can get someone as a spokesperson. And if they look similar to your target market and they're good at delivering lines, it's probably going to convert much better than a voiceover. And it's probably something your competitors haven't thought about. The last point I'll give here about video, this is also from the Thrasio example. They got actually Snoop Dogg to be a spokesperson for their Angry Orange brand. And so the thing that I want to make a point here is that a celebrity spokesperson is much more in reach than you think. And I'm not saying to go out and get Snoop Dogg, but like if you're, I don't know, if you're like getting that, well, spatula example is not good, but let's say you're selling like a fishing product. It would probably be much more reasonable than you think to go and contact like who is the top person in that niche market that people are going to recognize. This is for people with a little bit bigger budgets, but you're going to approach that person and you're going to say, hey, you know, 15, 20 grand, could we go and make a video and we can also use some photos in this? And then when people see it, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, how did they get the fish guy in their stuff? And it's like, probably much more in reach than you think. So this is like if you're selling $1 million plus a year and you're diving into this, but that's what I'll say. And if you want to like get in touch with someone who's a celebrity spokesperson, you might not be able to get on Instagram and send them a DM and be like, hey, do you want to be my spokesperson? Go and work with an agency that does a little bit more volume. They'll probably be able to reach out and be much more effective. One that I really like, they're the best in the game for video production. They're called Chamber Media. They used to have only extremely expensive options, like really expensive options for video, but now they have these mini anchor packages, and it's much more reasonable priced for getting really good video creative done. So that's where I'm going to wrap it up today. Go ahead.
Sorry, I would start to interject. These guys are actually Utah based. I think they actually just got acquired, which is kind of insane. But they were kind of like the up and comers from the guys that did the Purple Mattress and all that. They came out of that kind of world, but they also have a course, I think, and I think it's pretty inexpensive on like if you want to go script and do your own video. So I'll maybe reach out to them. They're local, see if we can hook them up. But like a couple other hacks that I think are worth thinking about. We'll get into this in the influencer module, but influencers are awesome too for that like spokesperson-esque video. The other thing that it's getting harder and harder with reviews and inserts and all this stuff to kind of play that game, and I don't recommend it as much as I used to. But one thing that you can do is incentivize user-generated content. Oh yeah. And then there's a little hack that we'll talk about that's obviously in the gray area, which is like, and why don't you go ahead and post, like, could you post that online, like if somebody sends it into you? But there's some ways to incent user-generated content from our actual customers that we can then use in video, in listing stuff, etc. But this is all awesome stuff. One thesis or theory that I have not tested. We're doing a golf brand example, Anthony, in this course, just as a, I don't know, hypothetical. Maybe we'll actually do it for real. But on the influence, what I've always wanted to do with these celebrities is actually offer equity versus paying them. So if you're on a budget, could you find somebody that's like maybe not like A-list, but like C plus or B, and be like, hey, I'll give you 2% equity in the company. I need you to do a post a month for us, and then let's see what we can do. I built $1 million Amazon brands, whatever your spiel is, but that might be another way on a budget to do it. But dude, and sorry to interject, it looked like it was the end of the deck anyway, but this is freaking mine. This is why when I was doing this course, I'm like, there's certain experts in certain fields, and like, you are just such a weapon and such a legend, dude. And thank you so much. I mean, literally I was going to do 4 or 5 different videos, and I think you just like knocked out this entire section on like listing visuals because it was so darn good. So thank you so much, honestly, man. It was incredible.
Yeah, Adam, I'm super happy to hear that. And I just want to reiterate what you said about user-generated content. Like, I've been spending some more time on Instagram watching Reels, looking at people's feeds, and it blows my mind how these people who are they're definitely not monetizing the stuff that they're doing. There's so many creative people, and like, I'm not one of those people. I can find some other people that can do it, but I'm blown away. And so I'm very confident. You're definitely right. Like, whether they're your own users or finding other people through other platforms, like, you can send someone a few $100 and that'll mean the world to them, and you'll get stuff that's better than an agency will give you.
Yep. And sometimes if it looks amateur or it's on an iPhone, sometimes that honestly converts better than like a glossy kind of okay done like professional shoot. So dude, so good. So I have like 2 questions that have racked up in my brain. And by the way, leave comments in this like actual video or in the Facebook group. If you guys have additional questions, we can totally kind of consolidate them for Anthony, because there may be more. But a couple things. Number one, offline, I don't know if you keep like a library of like links and examples of like, these guys make amazing listing images, these guys have amazing A+. But I think one thing I'm going to start doing is I'll start building a library of links. So Tony, I don't know if you have any like just in your war chest offline that you could send me. If you don't, totally fine. But I think I'm going to start consolidating a library of them because I think that would be cool. So more, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can definitely send this slide deck. I've got more as well.
Cool.
That would be cool. There's one group on Facebook which is pretty good, and we partnered with them a while ago. I think it's like maybe like £2 a month. I don't know what the conversion is. Like, I don't know. It's like $3 a month to join. And I don't think don't tell them I told you this, but I don't think they actually charge anyone anymore. But it's called Amazon Creatives. And the guy basically goes and just tries to curate the best examples of infographics, A+ content. And that's actually, I get a lot of stuff from the presentations from there. It doesn't get much interaction in the group, and I wish someone would do a better job with it, of like having more people contribute. But there's some really good inspiration there, and you see stuff and you're like, that's good.
Okay, great. And then the last one, which literally could be $1 million question for some people, and totally fine with whatever you're open to share and not share, but who are the vendors that you have seen working in this world for a time and through your days at PickFu and stuff that you're like, hey, if somebody were to ask me, you know, my brother was starting an Amazon business, who would you recommend for 3D? Who would you recommend for lifestyle, for video? Do you have like a war chest of vendors that you're like, here's who I would put my name to?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. So the simplest answer I can give you is that we have something on our website that I've been developing. It's called the PickFu Agency Program. And so if you just go to agencies.pickfu.com, these are people that have gone through. We have a really quick certification process. They go through like an hour and a half of training, and then they can get PickFu certified. And all of them are quite good. Everyone on there is very, very good. A lot of people ask me for, you know, leads to individual designers. This is a problem that I have for myself. I wish there was a better way to find them. Yeah, the agencies there are really good. I mentioned a few through this presentation today. Chamber Media is next level. If you've got some more money and you want to do full service management, Leron's company, Incrementum Digital, is very good. I collaborate with them as well. There's this guy, Chris Rawlings, who has a company called Sophie Society. That's really good. If you need 3D renderings, I don't have any problem plugging my own company, which is called Fade Visuals. We definitely make very good renders. If you go to Fiverr, it's going to be $100. We're like 4 times more expensive than that, but it's very high quality work. Yeah, I mean, I mean, and most of those agencies are actually on the agency directory anyway. So just check that out. And what I would also do is, like, if I can give any advice on agencies, don't believe the portfolio. Any agency can have an amazing portfolio. Start with a small order first and see. The biggest thing you're going to run into with an agency, and I ran an agency for 2 years, and so I saw this even with our own projects. The biggest thing you're going to run into, agencies are incredibly inconsistent in delivering on time, and they can also be very inconsistent with the quality of work. And so if you do a project, start small. And if the first one goes very well and you're very happy, it's more likely that it's going to be better. But don't give them your whole product line right off the bat. Make them work for it, and you know, find the good ones. You might have to go through a few agencies before you find one who can really serve the needs of your team.
Cool. Love it, dude. And I'm a huge fan of 3D. So I think what we'll do is, for one of the golf product ideas, just for fun, we'll do a 3D rendering of it, just so you guys can see what's possible.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll hook you up. I'll give you the one for free. Let's do a case study out of it.
Or whatever, I'll pay you, man. You've been awesome. So, I mean, I think it would just be cool to see how it all works. And what's cool about, I think, 3D, too, is if you're going to make molds and you're going to get really next level with product development, which is, I think, the era of Amazon that we're bleeding into. And you can do that inexpensively, and then there's some much more expensive ways to do that. But before you drop 10 G's on a mold, or $5 grand on a mold, or 20 grand or whatever, get a 3D done, go to PickFu, say, hey, is this actually compelling against some of these guys that are doing 80 grand a month on Amazon? If it's not compelling in 3D, that's a $300 lesson's better than a $10,000 lesson. So I think there's some ways to use it for product development iterations as well.
Maybe I have a whole deck that I can do on renders. It's definitely a great way to avoid risk in the product development phase, and there's some really cool stuff. I'd love to come back and do a talk on that, and maybe even do one on product development. But yeah, man, thanks for having me. This has been fun. I hope I didn't go too long.
No, it was totally fine. Well, let's do this then. I'll pick one of the ideas here. I'll think about it that I want to get rendered for this golf concept. And let's see what you guys can do, computer generated, and then we'll maybe go make the product and sell it. We'll see what happens.
Heck yeah, I'm excited.
Go. All right, brother. Thanks again. You're more than generous with your time and knowledge, and I think this is going to be one of the best videos in the course. And super appreciate all your time, brother.
Thanks so much, Adam.
All right, man. You bet. See ya.